Here's a useful question. If you wanted to leave the United States, could you? And by could you, I mean could you? Could you leave the United States if you wanted to? First of all, here's a good test. Find out what it would take for you to go from being within the borders of the United States to outside the borders of the United States in another sovereign country, and legally. Not illegally, not like what we're seeing at the Mexican-United States border. I mean legally. Could you go from point A within the United States to point B in a sovereign nation, any nation you want, point B, legally? Could you do that? Could you meet that Tier 1 standard of getting out of the United States? Answer that question to yourself. I'll leave that up to you. Now, on to Tier 2. Could you achieve residency in another first world and developed country, such as Canada? This is going to create a whole different level of criminal background check requirements, financial stability, and what particular skills and cultural associations you have. For instance, to get into Canada, you need $18,000 liquid. If you don't have $18,000 cash to go, you don't go. A lot of people who were anti-Trump found that out. They didn't have 18,000 reasons to go move and live and work in Canada. That's a problem, okay? Another thing is you need a college education to move yourself up the ladder as far as your application is concerned. And it also helps to be able to speak French. So there's a lot of requirements to actually live in a country. Can you make that jump? Answer yourself that question. You know, America's filled with a lot of immigrants. A lot of people who came from immigrant families. Think about where your great-grandparents or whoever immigrated over here came from, what their country of origin is. If you wanted to, could you go back to that country? Could you go back to the homeland? Do you even speak the language? Culturally, could you even adapt? Do you even have the money to do so? It's pretty bizarre to think that the place that your genetics have come from, you couldn't even go back there for various reasons. That's a pretty weird dilemma, don't you think? But it's really a dilemma that a lot of people face every single day in America, whether they want to admit it or not. But I ultimately think that that's a possible tragedy ready to unfold. Tell me what you think. So let me ask a closing question. If you can't leave legally, how is that different, or how does that function different or have the same end result as being a prisoner of any other variation? Right? Like the same thing as not being able to post bail, the same thing as having a conviction against you, which if you have a conviction against you, you may find it very difficult to leave the United States. Okay? So if you can't leave due to financial or legal restrictions, how does that function any different than being a prisoner by any other means? Think about that. Are you property of the United States? Have they turned you into property of the United States just as a prisoner is ward of the state? As free citizens, we shouldn't even have to ponder that question.
The other thing that the failure to think critically does is it creates a very frightening historical amnesia. So you don't know how you got here. You don't know where you came from. And again, that is something that popular culture, let's call it totalitarian capitalism, seeks to put in place so that people interpret their problems as personal problems rather than political or social problems. When you don't understand what's going on, when you imbibe the illusion that you're fed, the belief that reality is never an impediment to what you desire, that you can have everything you want, that blinds you. It keeps you from seeing what's happening around you. Then, because you are intellectually and emotionally unprepared, you scream for moral renewal and a new savior and a demagogue and vengeance. And at that point, you vomit it up, these very frightening figures. So the lunatic fringe of our political establishment, which is often laughed at by even a majority of the populace, in moments like that suddenly seizes power.